Commander Jack Novak stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror of his small apartment, wondering how exactly his life had come to this. Once the pride of Earth's United Defense Force, now he was reduced to teaching tactical theory at a community college to students who cared more about their social media feeds than flanking maneuvers. Failed to adhere to proper engagement protocols, he muttered, mimicking the nasal voice of General Hoffman at his disciplinary hearing. Excessive force not justified by the tactical situation. He splashed water on his face, as if those bureaucrats have ever been in an actual firefight. What the brass had called excessive and unauthorized deployment of thermobaric ordnance in a limited engagement zone, Novak had called making sure the job was done right the first time. Sure, he might have vaporized an empty enemy bunker complex rather than just disabling it as ordered, but in his defense, it had been a really nice explosion. The sudden blaring of emergency alerts from his phone interrupted his morning ritual of self-pity and regret. Novak grabbed the device, expecting another drill or false alarm. The message on screen made him freeze. This is not a test. Unidentified spacecraft in Earth orbit. All military personnel report to nearest command center immediately. 15 minutes later, Novak was speeding toward the nearest military base, breaking at least 7 traffic laws. By the time he arrived, the situation had escalated from potentially concerning to definitely concerning to oh shit, we're all going to die. Massive ships, each one the size of Manhattan, hung in the skies above every major city on Earth. The images coming in from around the world showed vessels of sleek, organic design, glowing with an eerie blue light that made them look like they belonged on the cover of one of those science fiction novels Novak secretly read, but would never admit to enjoying. Commander Novak, a young lieutenant, approached him as he entered the command center. General Hoffman wants to see you. Hoffman? The same Hoffman who said I'd be court-martialed if I ever came within 100 yards of active military operations again. Yes, sir. That Hoffman. Novak grinned. Well, end of the world must be serious if they're calling me in. General Hoffman looked like he'd aged a decade since Novak had last seen him. The command center bustled with activity, screens displaying the alien vessels from various angles. Novak. Hoffman acknowledged without enthusiasm. I need someone who thinks outside the box. God help me, that's you. Missed you too, sir. What's the situation? They'd made contact. Call themselves the Galactic Confederation. Apparently we're the new kids on the block, and they've come to offer us membership the way Hoffman said membership made it clear it wasn't an honor. A tall, thin woman in a crisp uniform approached. The aliens have requested a meeting with Earth's leaders. They're transmitting a signal globally, as if on cue. Every screen in the command center switched to show a humanoid figure. It had pale blue skin, elongated features, and eyes that seemed too large for its face. When it spoke, its mouth moved slightly out of sync with the words, like a badly dubbed movie. People of Earth, the alien began, its voice carrying an aristocratic inflection that immediately made Novak want to punch it in the face. I am High Commissioner Vex'ahlia of the Galactic Confederation. We have been observing your species for some time and have determined that you have reached sufficient technological advancement to be offered conditional membership in our enlightened community of worlds. Conditional, Novak muttered. Already don't like the sound of that. Vex'ahlia continued, however, during our observation, we have discovered disturbing aspects of your history and culture that must be addressed before full integration can be considered. Your species' propensity for violence and warfare is concerning. The alien's face contorted into what might have been discussed. Our historians have analyzed your conflicts, your world wars, your Cold War, your regional disputes. The methods employed are barbaric by Confederation standards. Thank you, Novak said to the screen. We are particularly disturbed by your development of nuclear weapons, biological agents, and chemical warfare. These constitute what we term ultimate weapons, tools of mass destruction that no civilized species would consider using. Hoffman leaned toward Novak. Are they seriously lecturing us about our weapons? Seems like it, Novak replied. Bet they've never seen what a Moab can do to an enemy position. Vex'ahlia's expression became grave. As per Confederation protocol, any species that develops ultimate weapons without the moral framework to contain their use must be supervised until they mature. We will be establishing a permanent presence in your system to ensure compliance with Confederation ethical standards. They're going to babysit us, Novak translated. With guns. Should you resist this intervention, the alien continued, we will be forced to demonstrate our own ultimate weapons as a deterrent. We hope this will not be necessary. You have 24 Earth hours to respond. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Did we just get threatened by space elves? Novak asked. Hoffman rubbed his temples. I need options, people. Diplomatic, military, anything. Reports began flooding in from around the world. Panic was spreading. Religious groups proclaimed the end times. Conspiracy theorists were having the best day of their lives. Stock markets crashed. Social media exploded with alien memes. In New York, someone was already selling t-shirts that read, "I survived the alien invasion and all I got was this lousy t-shirt." As the day progressed, more alien ships arrived, positioning themselves strategically around the planet. Military forces worldwide were placed on high alert, though everyone knew conventional weapons would be useless against the visitors. Sir, a communications officer called out, "We're getting reports of smaller craft leaving the mothership's satellite imagery, showed hundreds of smaller vessels descending toward Earth's surface. Are they attacking?" Hoffman demanded. "No, sir. They appear to be taking positions, establishing a perimeter." Novak studied the deployment pattern. "They're setting up containment positions. Like a prison guard tower arrangement. They're actually going to do it," Hoffman said quietly. "They're going to put the entire planet under alien martial law." Novak watched the screens, his mind racing through scenarios, each more desperate than the last. "Sir, when they mentioned ultimate weapons, did anyone else think they sounded a little, I don't know, theatrical about it? What's your point, Commander?" "My point is, when someone talks big about their weapons, it's usually because they're compensating for something. I think we should call their bluff." Hoffman looked at Novak like he'd suggested they fight the aliens with water balloons. "And if you're wrong," Novak shrugged, "then I guess I won't have to worry about that dishonorable discharge anymore." 23 hours and 47 minutes after the Galactic Confederation's ultimatum, humanity still had no unified response. The United Nations Security Council was deadlocked in debate, with half the representatives arguing for diplomatic appeasement and the other half insisting on standing firm against alien intimidation. 3 delegates had already been ejected for attempting to smuggle in unauthorized snacks, which seemed like a poor use of security resources given the circumstances. Commander Novak sat in a hastily assembled war room with General Hoffman and a collection of military brass from around the world. They'd been discussing options for hours, but the conversation kept circling back to one uncomfortable fact: they had no idea what these aliens were capable of. "We could try to hack their systems," suggested a French general whose name Novak hadn't bothered to learn. With what Novak replied, "Our most advanced computer is probably like an abacus to them. We could demonstrate our nuclear capabilities," offered a Russian commander. "Great plan," Novak said. "Let's nuke ourselves to show them we mean business." General Hoffman glared at him. "If you're not going to contribute constructively, Commander, you can leave." "I am contributing. I'm pointing out that all these plans are terrible." The room fell silent as a communications officer burst in. "Sir, the aliens are broadcasting again." All eyes turned to the central screen where High Commissioner Vex'ahlia appeared. The alien looked smug, which Novak found impressive considering their facial structure wasn't designed for human expressions. "People of Earth, your time for deliberation has expired. As we have received no formal acceptance of our terms, we will now demonstrate the power of our ultimate weapon to encourage your compliance." The screen split to show a live feed of a small alien craft hovering over what appeared to be a rural area. "Where is that?" Hoffman demanded. A quick analysis revealed the location: a tiny town called Plainville, Nebraska, population 326. The alien craft emitted a pulsing red light, then fired a beam downward. The feed momentarily whited out, then cleared to show a smoldering crater where a grain silo had been. The surrounding area was completely untouched. "That was our ultimate weapon at its lowest setting," Vex'ahlia announced proudly. "A precision molecular destabilizer that can be calibrated to affect anything from a single building to an entire continent. We trust this demonstration will convince you of the futility of resistance." The transmission ended, leaving the war room in confused silence. "That's it," Novak finally said. Their ultimate weapon took out a grain silo. Reports started coming in from Nebraska. 0 casualties. Property damage limited to 1 agricultural storage building and approximately 15,000 bushels of corn. The local sheriff was quoted as saying, "Heck, we lose more than that to tornadoes every year." Hoffman replayed the footage, studying it carefully. They specifically targeted an empty structure. This was a warning shot, designed to minimize casualties. Or Novak leaned forward. That's actually the best they can do. Before Hoffman could respond, his phone rang. After a brief conversation, he turned to the room. The president has called an emergency session at the Pentagon. Novak, you're coming with me. Me? Why? Because apparently your unorthodox thinking might be exactly what we need right now. 2 hours later, Novak found himself in a secure room beneath the Pentagon, surrounded by more stars and medals than a military parade. The president, a woman with a perpetually concerned expression, sat at the head of the table. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, we have a situation unlike any in human history. Our analysts have been studying the alien weapon demonstration, and we have. Questions a scientist in a rumpled lab coat stood up. The energy output of their weapon was approximately equivalent to a medium-sized conventional explosive, nothing close to nuclear capabilities. So their ultimate weapon is? Underwhelming, the president asked. That's putting it mildly, said a new voice from the doorway. Novak turned to see a woman enter the room. She wore civilian clothes and had wild red hair that seemed to defy gravity. She carried a tablet computer and walked with the confidence of someone who knew exactly how dangerous they were. Dr. Eleanor Richards, she introduced herself. But everyone calls me Boom Boom. Dr. Richards is our leading weapons specialist, the president explained. And I'm telling you, Richards continued, that what they demonstrated wouldn't even qualify as a special weapon in our arsenal, let alone an ultimate one. She tapped her tablet, projecting a comparison chart onto the wall screen. Here's their molecular destabilizer effect compared to a standard Hellfire missile. The Hellfire has roughly twice the destructive capacity. Are you saying we have better weapons than the aliens? A general asked. I'm saying their demonstration was pathetic, Richards replied with undisguised glee. It's like threatening someone with a water pistol when they're holding a flamethrower. Novak felt a smile spreading across his face. So they're bluffing, either that, Richards said, or they genuinely believe this is impressive weaponry. The president looked troubled. But their ships, their technology, they're clearly more advanced than us in some areas. Advanced doesn't always mean militarized, Hoffman suggested. Maybe they develop differently. There's one way to find out, Novak said. All eyes turned to him. We show them what a real ultimate weapon looks like. The room erupted in argument. Half the officials thought any aggressive action would lead to humanity's extinction. The other half were already debating which weapons to showcase. Richards sidled up next to Novak. I like how you think, Commander. You don't even know what I'm thinking. You want to scare the living daylights out of them, she said with a grin that was just slightly too wide for comfort. Make them regret ever looking at our little planet. Something like that. I have some prototype designs you might be interested in. The president called the room to order. We need a formal response. Options. An admiral stood. Diplomatic engagement. Agree to their terms while we build our defenses. Appeasement. Novak couldn't keep the disgust from his voice. They just attacked U.S. soil. They destroyed a silo, the admiral countered. If I broke into your house and smashed your coffee table, would you invite me to dinner? Novak asked. They've already shown they're willing to use force. They just don't know that their force is laughable. The president rubbed her temples. Commander Novak, what exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we call their bluff. They think we're violent? Let's show them why they should be afraid of that violence. You want to attack alien ships? Someone asked incredulously. No, Novak said. I want to demonstrate our capabilities in a way they can't ignore. Make them think twice about containing us. A controlled demonstration, Richards chimed in. Something impressive but not directly aggressive. The president looked between them. You two seem to be on the same wavelength. Develop a proposal and have it on my desk in 3 hours. If it's not completely insane, we'll consider it. As the meeting disbanded, Richards cornered Novak. I have 17 different ways to make big things go boom in spectacular fashion. How do you feel about using a decommissioned aircraft carrier as a target? I feel like I'm going to enjoy working with you, Dr. Richards. Boom boom, she corrected. Only my mother and people I'm about to blow up call me Dr. Richards. By sunset, Novak and Richards had assembled in a temporary office with whiteboards covered in what looked like the scribblings of deranged pyromaniacs. General Hoffman entered, took one look at their plans, and visibly aged another year. Please tell me this is a joke, he said, pointing to a diagram labeled Operation Shock and Awesome. The name is a work in progress, Novak admitted. The president has authorized a response demonstration, Hoffman said, but nothing that might be interpreted as a direct attack. Define direct attack, Richards asked, tapping a pen against her teeth. If you have to ask, it's probably too direct, Hoffman replied dryly. Novak pointed to a different section of the whiteboard. We've got something that might work. We detonate a series of our largest conventional weapons in an uninhabited area. Make it clear we could have targeted their ships but chose not to. Like flexing a muscle without throwing a punch, Richards added. Hoffman studied the proposal. And if they respond by vaporizing a city, they won't, Novak said with more confidence than he felt. If they could, they would have done it already. That silo hit was their best shot. You're betting the fate of humanity on that assessment, yes, sir. I am. Hoffman sighed deeply. God help us all. The demonstration is approved 2 hours later. As night fell over the Pacific Ocean, Operation History Lesson was underway. A series of massive explosives had been positioned on a remote, uninhabited island that had previously been used for weapons testing. In the command center, Novak, Richards, and Hoffman watched as the final preparations were made. They had broadcast their intentions to the alien fleet, inviting them to observe what humans considered a modest display of conventional force. All charges set, came the report from the demolition team. Awaiting final authorization, the president gave a solemn nod. Proceed. Richards was practically bouncing with excitement. This is going to be beautiful. Novak leaned closer to her. You know, most people would find your enthusiasm for explosions disturbing. Most people are boring, she replied, without taking her eyes off the screen. The countdown began. As it reached 0, the remote island erupted in a carefully choreographed sequence of explosions that sent shockwaves visible on satellite imagery. The blasts were precisely calculated to create a rising crescendo of destruction, culminating in a final detonation that left a crater visible from space. When the dust settled, the island was gone. In its place was a smoking circle of disturbed ocean. Signal the aliens, the president ordered. Tell them that was approximately 1/10,000th of our conventional arsenal, deployed in a manner specifically designed to avoid casualties. Ask if they'd like to reconsider their position on containing us. The response came faster than anyone expected. High Commissioner Vex'ahlia's face appeared on screen, but the smug confidence was gone. The alien looked, shaken. What manner of barbarians are you? Vex'ahlia demanded, voice trembling. You just destroyed an entire landmass. A very small, uninhabited landmass, Novak couldn't resist pointing out. The Galactic Confederation will not be intimidated by displays of primitive brutality, Vex'ahlia declared, though the effect was somewhat undermined by the visible tremor in their elongated fingers. Not intimidated, Richards whispered to Novak. They look like they're about to faint. We will respond appropriately to this provocation, Vex'ahlia continued. We look forward to it, the president replied coolly. Perhaps next time you could target something more impressive than a grain silo. The transmission cut abruptly. Well, Hoffman said into the silence that followed, I think we got their attention. Novak nodded, studying the alien ships on the monitor. They were repositioning, moving higher into orbit further away from Earth. They're backing off, he observed. But they're not leaving. What now? The president asked. Richards grinned that unsettling grin again. Now we show them what humans do best. Escalate. Let me get this straight, General Hoffman said, pinching the bridge of his nose. You want to break into an advanced alien spaceship, hack their systems, and psychologically terrorize them with human history. Novak and Richards exchanged glances. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds crazy, Novak admitted. It is crazy, but also brilliant, Richards added, unwrapping her fourth energy bar of the hour. The conference room table was littered with wrappers and empty coffee cups, evidence of the 18-hour strategy session that had produced their current plan. It had been 3 days since Earth's island obliterating response. The alien fleet remained in orbit, but had maintained a decidedly higher altitude. Occasional transmissions from the Galactic Confederation alternated between threats and offers of dialogue to address Earth's concerning military aggression. Operation Historical Payback, Novak continued, pointing to their presentation slides, is a 3-phase plan. Phase 1 infiltration, Phase 2 intelligence gathering, Phase 3 psychological warfare. Hoffman stared at them. And exactly how do you propose to infiltrate an alien vessel? We can't even approach them without being detected, Richards grinned. That's where our new team members come in. On cue, the conference room door opened, and 2 people entered. The first was a lanky man with thick glasses and a t-shirt that read "I hacked your mother" in pixelated font. The second was a woman with close cropped hair, khaki tactical pants, and at least 3 visible knife sheaths. General Hoffman, meet Rex Daniels, cyber warfare specialist, Novak said, gesturing to the man. Soup, Rex said, dropping into a chair and immediately propping his feet on the table. And this is Lieutenant Maya Ortiz, linguistics and cultural analysis expert. Ortiz gave a crisp nod. Sir Daniels isn't military, Hoffman noted. No, sir. Until last month, he was serving a 15-year sentence for hacking NORAD on a dare. Rex shrugged. Worth it. The look on their faces when I changed all their missile icons to eggplant emojis. The president offered him a full pardon in exchange for his expertise, Richards explained. And what exactly makes you think he can hack alien technology? Hoffman asked. 3 hours ago, he gained partial access to their communication systems, Novak said. Hoffman's eyes widened. That's impossible, not impossible. Just improbable, Rex corrected, pulling out a tablet. Their encryption is advanced, but their basic network architecture is surprisingly universal. Math is math, even for blue space elves. Plus, they've been broadcasting signals non-stop. Gave me plenty to work with. What about you? Lieutenant Ortiz. Hoffman turned to the woman. What's your role in this madness? I've been studying their language patterns, sir. Their translators convert everything to English, but the underlying syntax and cultural references tell us a lot about how they think. And how do they think? Like self-righteous pacifists who've never faced a real threat, Ortiz replied. They use terminology consistent with a society that has theoretically understood the concept of war, but has never actually experienced it. Their diplomatic language is textbook by the manual with no adaptability. In short, sir, they're soft. Novak picked up the thread. Which is why we believe we can get onto their ship with minimal resistance. You still haven't explained how, Hoffman said. Richards tapped her tablet, bringing up a schematic on the main screen. They've been sending small shuttles down to establish monitoring stations. Our satellite tracking shows a regular pattern. Same trajectory, same schedule. We're going to hijack the return trip of one shuttle, Novak continued. Rex has already cloned their communication protocols. We can mask our presence long enough to dock with the mothership. Hoffman looked skeptical. And then what? Then we implement phases 2 and 3 simultaneously, Ortiz said. I infiltrate their information systems to gather intelligence on their actual capabilities and weaknesses, while Rex uploads a special package into their cultural database. What kind of package? Hoffman asked. Richard's grin turned predatory. Human history. Unfiltered, uncensored, with special emphasis on warfare. We're going to educate them, Novak explained, on exactly what they're dealing with. Show them why threatening Earth was the worst mistake of their collective lives. The room fell silent as Hoffman considered the plan. Finally, he sighed. The President has authorized me to approve covert operations at my discretion. God help me, but this might be crazy enough to work. When can you be ready? We're already ready, Novak said. We just need a green light. 24 hours later, Operation Historical Payback was underway. A small, retrofitted stealth aircraft carried the team toward the coordinates where an alien shuttle was scheduled to ascend. The craft had been hastily modified with technology reverse-engineered from debris collected after the grain silo incident. I still can't believe their ultimate weapon left so much analyzable material behind, Richards commented, checking her equipment. It's like they wanted us to figure out how it works. Their technological arrogance is our advantage, Ortiz replied. She was reviewing alien language patterns on a tablet. They don't believe less advanced species could possibly understand their systems. Less advanced, my ass, Rex muttered, fingers flying over his custom-built interface. Their network security is like Swiss cheese if Swiss cheese actively wanted you to eat it, Novak, piloting the craft, checked the radar. Shuttle approaching in 3 minutes. Everyone ready. The team confirmed they were prepared. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. They would attach their craft to the underside of the returning shuttle using magnetic clamps, riding it back to the mothership like Ramirez on a shark. Rex would jam any sensors that might detect them, while simultaneously feeding false data to make the shuttle appear normal to mothership monitoring. Contact in 30 seconds, Novak announced, maneuvering into position. Brace for attachment. The craft shuddered as the magnetic clamps engaged. On the screens, they could see the underside of the alien shuttle, a sleek, oval vessel with no visible propulsion system. Attachment successful, Richards confirmed. Clamps holding steady, initiating electronic countermeasures, Rex said, activating his systems, and we're invisible, digitally speaking. The ride up was surprisingly smooth. The alien shuttle accelerated at a pace that should have crushed them with G-forces, but somehow the effects were minimal. They must have some form of inertial dampening, Richards observed, making notes on her tablet. We need to steal that technology, one alien technological marvel at a time. Please, Novak replied dryly. As they approached the mothership, they got their first close-up view of the massive vessel. It resembled a giant blue snowflake, with elegant, crystalline structures extending from a central hub. Pretty, Ortiz commented. Shame we're going to traumatize its occupants. The shuttle docked with one of the snowflake arms. Through their sensors, the team watched as the alien crew disembarked. Monitoring shows minimal security scanning, Rex reported. These guys really don't expect trouble, do they? Complacency will be their downfall, Novak said. Detach and prepare for boarding. Using the shuttle as cover, they maneuvered their craft to an adjacent maintenance hatch that Rex had identified from the schematics he'd already pulled from the alien network. I'm telling you, he said as he bypassed the hatch security, these guys have the digital equivalent of a welcome mat, and the key under the doormat. The hatch opened with a soft hiss, revealing a pristine corridor bathed in gentle blue light. We're in, Novak whispered, though there was no one around to hear them. Phase 1 complete. They moved through the ship with surprising ease. Rex had hacked into the internal monitoring systems, putting them on a continuous loop that showed empty corridors. Occasionally they had to duck into alcoves to avoid alien crew members, but for the most part, the ship seemed sparsely populated. Where is everyone? Richards wondered. According to the ship's manifest, Rex replied, checking his tablet, this vessel has a crew of over 10,000, but most of them are in suspended animation. Why would they need suspended animation for a first contact mission? Novak asked. Ortiz looked up from her own data analysis. Because this isn't a military vessel. It's a colonization ship. They're not here to fight a war. They're here to establish an outpost. That revelation changed everything. The team exchanged glances as they processed the implications. So their big threatening fleet, Richards began, is actually a bunch of space-moving vans. Novak finished. With really crappy weapons, Rex added. They reached their target, a data hub nestled deep within the ship. Rex immediately began connecting his equipment to the alien interfaces. I'm in, he announced after a few minutes. And holy mother of code, you won't believe what I'm finding. Try me, Novak said. These guys have had interstellar travel for over 15,000 years. They've contacted hundreds of species. Rex's eyes widened as he scrolled through the data. But get this, they've never had a war. Not a single one. Ever. That's impossible, Richards said. No species evolves without conflict. Oh, they had conflicts, Rex clarified. But they developed a system of ritualized combat where designated representatives would fight in controlled environments with minimal weapons. The most casualties they ever had in a war was 27 individuals. 27? Total. Novak couldn't hide his disbelief. Total. For their entire history, Ortiz had been analyzing cultural files on another terminal. It gets better. Their definition of an ultimate weapon is any device capable of taking more than one life simultaneously. Their ethical framework evolved to consider such weapons fundamentally immoral. So when they saw our history, Richards began, they literally couldn't comprehend it, Ortiz finished. Their brains don't have the framework to understand industrialized warfare. Novak felt a slow smile spread across his face. Well then, I think it's time for their education to begin. Rex, are you ready with the history package locked and loaded? Where do you want to start? World War II seems appropriate. Show them what happens when humans get really serious about fighting. Rex's fingers danced across his keyboard. Uploading now. I'm piping it directly into their information network and marking it as high-priority cultural data. Make sure to include footage of the nuclear tests, Richards added. Both the atmospheric and underwater ones. And the Dresden firebombing, Ortiz suggested. The contrast of conventional weapons with strategic deployment should be particularly jarring to their sensibilities. You're all horrible people, Rex said, admiringly as he implemented their suggestions. I'm also adding Vietnam. The psychological warfare aspect should really bake their noodles. Don't forget to include our bioweapon research, Richards said. Just the theoretical stuff, obviously, but it should get the point across. And throw in some footage from our current military training exercises, Novak added. Let them see what our troops can do even in peacetime as they worked. Novak accessed a different terminal, searching for information about the ship's actual capabilities. What he found confirmed their suspicions. The Galactic Confederation had evolved as diplomats and explorers, not warriors. Their technology was incredibly advanced in areas like medicine, transportation, and communication, but their weapons were indeed pathetic by human standards. Their molecular destabilizer is actually a modified mining tool, he reported. They repurposed industrial equipment into weapons because they never developed dedicated armaments. This is almost too easy, Richards said, a note of disappointment in her voice. I was hoping for a real challenge. Don't get cocky, Novak warned. They still outnumber and out-tech us in most areas. We need to press our advantage before they adapt. A soft alarm began to sound from Rex's equipment. Oh. They've noticed someone's accessing their systems. Time for Phase 3, Novak decided. Maya, are you ready? Ortiz nodded, moving to a communication terminal. Ready, do it. Ortiz activated the ship's internal communication system, a voice echoing throughout the entire vessel. The aliens would hear it in their own language, thanks to their translation systems. Attention, crew of the Galactic Confederation vessel. This is Lieutenant Maya Ortiz of Earth's Special Operations Division. We have infiltrated your vessel and accessed your systems. She paused, allowing the shock to register. We have analyzed your capabilities and found them wanting. Your so-called ultimate weapon wouldn't qualify as a tactical munition in our arsenal. Your defenses against cyber warfare are non-existent. Your crew is untrained for combat. Another calculated pause. However, we have not come to harm you. We have come to educate you. At this moment, detailed records of Earth's military history are being uploaded to your cultural database. We suggest you review them carefully before you continue threats against our planet. Novak took over the communication. This is Commander Jack Novak. Consider this a professional courtesy from one spacefaring species to another. You've been operating under dangerously incorrect assumptions about humanity. We could have destroyed this vessel. Instead, we chose to deliver a message. Earth is not to be threatened. We are not to be contained. We are to be respected as equals. We will be departing now, he continued. If your leadership would like to reopen diplomatic discussions on equal terms, we welcome the opportunity. If not, he let the implication hang in the air. Oh, and High Commissioner Vex'ahlia Richards couldn't resist adding, that grain silo you blew up? The farmer's insurance is calling it an act of God, so technically, we don't even consider your ultimate weapon to be an act of war. Think about that. As alarms began blaring throughout the ship, the team quickly gathered their equipment. Time to go, Rex asked, disconnecting his devices. Time to go, Novak confirmed. But first he placed a small device on the data terminal. What's that? Ortiz asked. It's a gift. If they try to purge the data we uploaded, it'll trigger a ship-wide broadcast of the most terrifying moments in human military history, set to Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries. Richards slow clapped. That's truly evil. I'm so proud. They made their way back to their craft, encountering surprisingly little resistance. The few aliens they did encounter seemed more terrified than hostile, pressing themselves against walls to let the humans pass. They look like they've seen ghosts, Ortiz observed. They have, Novak replied. The ghosts of humanity's violent past, and the promise of what we could do in the future if provoked. As they reattached to the maintenance hatch and prepared to depart, Rex checked his tablet one last time. Guys, you won't believe this. They're broadcasting an emergency signal to their high command. Want to hear what it says? Hit us, Richards said. Rex cleared his throat and read in a mock dramatic voice, urgent alert. Earth humans have demonstrated infiltration capabilities beyond predicted parameters. Cultural database compromised. Historical records indicate species far more dangerous than initially assessed. Requesting immediate diplomatic intervention and revised containment protocols. Warning, do not. Repeat, do not antagonize further. Novak smiled as their craft detached from the mothership and began its descent back to Earth. Mission accomplished. The return to Earth was considerably less smooth than the journey up. As their craft hit the atmosphere, it shuddered violently, threatening to shake itself apart. I thought you said you could fly this thing, Richards shouted over the noise, gripping her seat so tightly her knuckles turned white. I said I could fly it, Novak corrected, wrestling with the controls. I never said anything about landing it. That's a critical distinction that might have been nice to clarify earlier, Rex yelled as his tablet flew out of his hands and bounced around the cabin. Ortiz remained calm, methodically checking the straps on her harness. If we die, I'm going to kill all of you. That's temporarily impossible, Richards pointed out. I'll find a way. Somehow, Novak managed to bring the craft down in a remote area of the Nevada desert, where a military recovery team was waiting. The landing was less a controlled descent and more a series of increasingly violent bounces, followed by a skid that carved a quarter-mile trench in the desert floor. "See," Novak said, as the craft finally came to rest. "Perfect landing, we're upside down," Richards observed. "I said perfect, not conventional." General Hoffman was waiting when they were extracted from the wreckage. Despite their disheveled appearance, Rex had somehow ended up wearing his own backpack as a hat. The team was jubilant. "Mission successful," Sir Novak reported, delivering a salute that was only slightly hampered by the fact that his arm might have been dislocated. "We've given the aliens something to think about." "More than you know," Hoffman replied, leading them toward a waiting helicopter. "Their entire fleet has pulled back to lunar orbit. The High Commissioner is demanding emergency talks." "Demanding?" Richards raised an eyebrow. "They're not exactly in a position to demand anything desperately requesting." Then Hoffman amended. "They seem shaken good," Ortiz said with satisfaction. That was the point. Within an hour they were back at the Pentagon, being debriefed in the same secure room where the operation had been planned. The president joined via video link, looking both impressed and concerned. "You broke into an alien spacecraft, hacked their systems, and uploaded the entirety of human military history directly into their cultural database," she summarized. "All without firing a shot." "Yes," Ma'am Novak confirmed. Though technically Dr. Richards was carrying a sidearm for emotional support, Richards clarified. The president shook her head in disbelief. "And you're certain they had no idea we were coming?" "None whatsoever," Rex said, now sporting a neck brace that he insisted on wearing despite medical personnel finding nothing wrong with him. "Their cybersecurity is garbage. It's like they never considered someone might try to hack them." "Because no one ever has," Ortiz explained. "Their entire civilization evolved without the concept of digital warfare. Their network architecture is built on the assumption that everyone has good intentions," Adorable Richards commented. "What have we learned about their actual capabilities?" the president asked. Novak took the lead on this point. "Their technology is centuries beyond ours in most areas: medicine, propulsion, energy production. But their weapons are a joke. They never developed dedicated military technology because they never needed to. Their society evolved without major conflicts," Ortiz added. "They have theoretical knowledge of warfare but no practical experience. It would be like someone who's only read about swimming trying to cross the English Channel." "So they were bluffing," the president concluded. "Not exactly," Novak said. "They genuinely believed their ultimate weapon was terrifying. By their standards it was. They simply had no frame of reference for what actual warfare looks like. And now they do," Hoffman said grimly. "You've shown them exactly what humanity is capable of when threatened." "We've shown them what humanity was capable of in the 1940s, Richards corrected with a predatory smile. "We haven't even gotten to the good stuff yet." The president looked concerned. "The goal here is deterrence, not provocation. We want them to leave us alone, not declare an actual war. They might eventually learn how to fight. Which brings us to our next recommendation," Novak said. "Operation Psychological Edge. "I'm afraid to ask," Hoffman muttered. "It's simple. We maintain the momentum we've established, keep them off balance while we negotiate from a position of strength." Rex pulled up a presentation on the main screen, wincing dramatically as he moved his perfectly fine neck. "We've already started broadcasting military exercise footage on open channels we know they're monitoring. Tank maneuvers, naval exercises, air combat drills, all with commentary discussing how these are routine peacetime readiness activities. We're also preparing a special broadcast for their leadership," Ortiz continued. "A documentary-style presentation on Earth's most significant conflicts, with emphasis on how warfare has driven our technological development. The message being that conflict has made us stronger," Novak explained. "While peace has left them vulnerable. Psychological warfare," the president noted. "Exactly," Richards confirmed. "We need to establish ourselves as the scary, unpredictable species you don't want to mess with." "The cosmic equivalent of the prison yard strategy," Rex added. "First day, punch the biggest guy in the face so everyone leaves you alone." The president considered this for a moment. "I'll authorize continued psychological operations, but I want to emphasize diplomacy as well. We should be preparing to negotiate from strength, not pushing them into a corner." "Already on it," Ortiz said. I've analyzed their diplomatic protocols. They have elaborate procedures for conflict resolution, including a multi-stage process for acknowledging mistakes and saving face. We can use that, Novak suggested. Give them an honorable way to back down while recognizing our sovereignty. The meeting was interrupted by an urgent message. An aide hurried in, handing Hoffman a tablet. The aliens are broadcasting again, he announced. Globally. The main screen switched to show High Commissioner Vex'ahlia. The alien looked distinctly less composed than in previous broadcasts. Their blue skin had taken on a grayish tinge, and their large eyes darted nervously. People of Earth, Vex'ahlia began, voice slightly higher than before. The Galactic Confederation wishes to clarify certain misunderstandings that may have arisen during our initial contact. Our offer of membership was extended in the spirit of peaceful cooperation, not as a demand or threat. Novak and Richards exchanged satisfied glances. We recognize that cultural differences have led to misinterpretations of intent. The demonstration of our molecular stabilization technology was meant only as a display of Confederation capabilities, not as aggressive action. They're backpedaling, Ortiz whispered. In light of recent communications, Vex'ahlia continued, choosing words carefully, we propose a formal diplomatic exchange to better understand your unique cultural perspective on interspecies relations. Translation, please stop scaring us, Rex snickered. The Confederation fleet will maintain a respectful distance while these discussions proceed. We await your response and remain committed to peaceful dialogue. The transmission ended. They're terrified, Richards observed with satisfaction. And confused, Ortiz added. Their cultural framework doesn't have the concepts to process what they've learned about us. It's like trying to explain calculus to someone who's just learned to count. The president looked thoughtful. This could be an opportunity. If they're truly as peaceful as they claim, perhaps we can establish a relationship that benefits both species. With all due respect, Madam President Novak said, we should maintain pressure until we're sure of their intentions. The moment they perceive weakness, they might revert to their original containment plan. What do you suggest? Before Novak could answer, another urgent message arrived. This one was directed specifically to the Pentagon from the mothership. It's addressed to Commander Novak. Hoffman said, surprised. How do they know your name? I may have mentioned it during our little broadcast from their ship, Novak admitted. The message was put on screen. It came from someone identifying as Admiral Klex, military coordinator of the Confederation fleet. Commander Novak, the message read. Your infiltration of our vessel demonstrates capabilities we did not anticipate. The historical data you provided is disturbing. I request a private communication to discuss matters of mutual security concern. They have military coordinators, Richards asked. I thought they were all peaceful explorers. Every society has some security function, Ortiz explained, even if it's primarily defensive or ceremonial. Should I respond? Novak asked the president. She nodded. Engage, but be cautious. This Admiral Klex might be more martial-minded than the High Commissioner. A secure communication channel was established, and soon the face of Admiral Klex appeared on a private screen. The alien resembled other members of their species, but had distinctive markings on their face and wore what appeared to be a uniform of some kind. Commander Novak, Klex began without preamble. Your species is insane. Novak blinked, surprised by the bluntness. That's one perspective. You have devoted significant resources to developing ways to kill each other. You have weapons designed specifically to cause maximum casualties. You have strategies built around the concept of acceptable losses. This is incomprehensible to us. And yet here we are, talking instead of fighting, Novak pointed out. We developed these capabilities so we don't have to use them deterrence through strength, Klex said, using the exact phrase from the historical data they had uploaded. A concept we are now reassessing. Smart move. I have reviewed your World War II in detail, Klex continued. Your Manhattan Project in particular. You created atomic weapons knowing they would kill hundreds of thousands of your own species to end a war that would have killed millions more, Novak countered. Klex's large eyes blinked slowly. This is the reasoning I cannot comprehend. You committed one atrocity to prevent another. Welcome to human ethics. It's complicated. Indeed, Klex seemed to hesitate. I must ask, the other weapons referenced in your historical documents. The hydrogen bombs, the neutron devices, the biological agents. Do you possess these currently? Novak chose his words carefully. Admiral, I'm not authorized to confirm or deny specific weapons capabilities. But I can tell you that what you saw in our historical record represents only a fraction of what humanity has developed since those days. This wasn't entirely true. Biological weapons had been largely abandoned under international treaties, but Klex didn't need to know that. I suspected as much, the alien said quietly. The High Commissioner believes your species can be guided toward a more peaceful existence through proper cultural exchange. After reviewing your history, I am less optimistic. If it makes you feel better, we haven't nuked ourselves yet. That shows restraint. Small comfort. Klex leaned closer to the camera. Tell me honestly, Commander, if we had attempted to enforce containment of your planet, what would your response have been? Honestly, we would have fought. And while you might have superior technology in many areas, we have been perfecting the art of warfare for thousands of years. It would have been messy. Yes, Klex agreed. That is the conclusion I have reached as well. Which is why I have recommended to the High Commissioner that we immediately abandon any containment protocols and recognize Earth's autonomy. That was unexpected. Just like that. The Confederation has survived for 15 millennia by knowing when to adapt. Your species represents a type of threat we have never encountered, not because you are evil, but because you are forged in conflict. You think differently. You plan differently. You would rather die fighting than submit. That's actually a pretty good assessment. There is a concept in your military history that I found particularly relevant. One of your philosophers of war, Clausewitz, I believe, wrote that one should never initiate a conflict without understanding exactly what kind of war one is getting into. Novak was impressed. You've been doing your homework extensively. And what I have learned has convinced me that attempting to control humanity would be a catastrophic error. We would be entering a type of conflict for which we have no preparation against an adversary with millennia of experience. So what happens now? Klex's expression was unreadable. Now, Commander Novak, we negotiate, not as patrons to a primitive species, but as equals with different strengths. I have already begun preparing the High Commissioner for this reality adjustment. The screen suddenly split to show another urgent message coming in from the Pentagon's monitoring stations. Sir, a technician reported, we're detecting massive energy surges from the alien fleet. They're doing something. Novak turned back to Klex. Care to explain? A demonstration of good faith, the alien replied. We are deactivating our primary defense systems and powering down our molecular destabilizers. A gesture to show we have no hostile intent. That's surprisingly reasonable. We are not unreasonable, Commander. Merely inexperienced in certain areas. This, however, is rapidly changing thanks to your educational efforts. There was something in the way Klex emphasized the word educational that gave Novak pause. Admiral, are you studying our military history for defensive purposes, or for something else? Klex's mouth formed what might have been the alien equivalent of a smile. Let us just say that your species has proven that preparation for conflict can prevent conflict. This is a lesson the Confederation may need to consider more carefully in the future. Before Novak could respond, the communication ended. He turned to find Richards, Ortiz, and Rex staring at him. Did we just accidentally teach the peaceful alien civilization how to prepare for war? Rex asked. I think, Ortiz said slowly, we may have given the one militarily minded alien their society a crash course in human warfare strategy. That could be problematic, Richards admitted. Novak considered this for a moment, then shrugged. They're 15,000 years away from developing a real military doctrine. By then we'll probably be best friends, or extinct. Either way, not our problem. Such optimism, Ortiz said dryly. I prefer to think of it as strategic compartmentalization, Novak replied. Right now we have them recognizing us as equals instead of primitives to be contained. I'm calling that a win. The president, who had been listening to the exchange, spoke up. I agree. This Admiral Klex seems to understand the situation more clearly than their political leadership. If he can convince them to treat us as equals, that creates an opening for genuine diplomatic progress. So what's our next move? Hoffman asked. Novak grinned. Now we really freaked them out. As simulation. High Commissioner Vex'ahlia looked puzzled, elongated fingers nervously tapping the conference table. I don't understand. Just a friendly demonstration, Novak explained, leaning back in his chair with practiced nonchalance. The makeshift negotiation room, hastily constructed at a neutral site in international waters, buzzed with tension. Earth's delegation sat on one side, the Confederation representatives on the other, Admiral Klex looking particularly uncomfortable. We've prepared a visual model of our defensive capabilities, Richards added, Her manic grin doing nothing to ease the alien's obvious discomfort. Nothing to worry about. Just some routine military technology we've been developing. The lights dimmed, and a holographic display activated in the center of the table. It showed Earth, surrounded by the Confederation fleet. "This is our current situation," Novak narrated, "and this is what would happen if Earth activated Defense Protocol Omega-7. The simulation showed thousands of missiles launching simultaneously from Earth's surface, each splitting into multiple warheads. The alien representatives visibly recoiled as the simulation depicted their entire fleet disintegrating in seconds. "That's impossible," a Confederation scientist stammered. "Your technology isn't advanced enough for such precision targeting, really." Novak raised an eyebrow. "We put a man on the moon using computers less powerful than a modern calculator. Imagine what we can do with today's technology." Of course, the simulation was wildly exaggerated. Earth possessed nothing close to the capabilities displayed. But the aliens didn't know that. "And that's just our conventional arsenal," Richards chimed in. "We haven't even shown you Project Helios." "Project Helios," Vex'ahlia echoed, voice trembling slightly. "Classified, I'm afraid," Novak said, exchanging a meaningful glance with Richards. There was no Project Helios. They had made it up 10 minutes before the meeting. Admiral Klex studied them carefully. "You're bluffing." Awi Ortiz countered, sliding a tablet across the table. "These are satellite images of our Helios testing facility in Antarctica." The images showed a legitimate research station, complete with massive dish arrays for climate research. The aliens, however, saw only ominous structures and potential weapons. "This is why we were so restrained. In our initial response to your arrival," Novak continued smoothly, "we didn't want to escalate unnecessarily. Helios has never been deployed operationally. It would be a shame to break that streak." Back at the Pentagon, Rex watched the proceedings via secure video link, frantically creating convincing-looking schematics and simulations as the team requested them. "They're buying it," he whispered to General Hoffman. "Those poor space elves are practically shaking." The psychological warfare campaign escalated over the next 3 days. Earth's team introduced increasingly elaborate weapon systems, each more ridiculous than the last. Project Lazarus, supposedly capable of resurrecting dead soldiers. The Poseidon Protocol, allegedly able to trigger targeted tsunamis. Operation Black Star, a constellation of satellites that could supposedly redirect asteroids. None of these existed, of course. But with each new revelation, the aliens grew more agitated. The masterstroke came on day 4. Novak arrived at the negotiation table looking grave. "I've just received troubling news," he announced. "Our early warning systems have detected unusual activity from your fleet." "What?" No, Vex'ahlia protested. "We've powered down all systems as agreed." Perhaps, Novak said ominously, "but our sensors indicate otherwise. As a precaution, the Defense Council has authorized activation of the Doomsday Countdown." A holographic display appeared, showing a timer counting down from 24 hours. "What is this?" Klex demanded. "Standard protocol," Richards explained casually. "If the countdown reaches 0, all of our ultimate defense systems activate simultaneously. Planet killer capabilities, I'm afraid. But we've done nothing hostile," Vex'ahlia insisted, blue skin paling to a sickly grey. "I believe you," Novak said reasonably, "which is why I'm confident we'll resolve this misunderstanding before the countdown ends. Perhaps a more formal diplomatic arrangement might help." Klex's eyes narrowed. "You manufactured this crisis." Novak met his gaze steadily. "Did we? Or are we simply responding to potential threats with appropriate caution? After all, that's what you came here to do to us." Within 6 hours, the Confederation had assembled their highest-ranking diplomatic team. Within 12, they had drafted a preliminary recognition of Earth's sovereignty. By hour 18, they were offering technological exchange programs and mutual defense pacts. The timer stopped with 3 hours remaining. A gesture of good faith, Novak explained, deactivating the hologram with a casual flick of his hand. Admiral Klex watched him with what might have been newfound respect. The formal negotiation chamber aboard the Confederation diplomatic vessel gleamed with an ethereal light. After weeks of preliminary talks, Earth's delegation had finally been invited aboard to finalize the agreement. "Before we begin," Novak said, standing at the head of the Earth delegation, "there's something you should know." The room fell silent. "Project Helios doesn't exist," Vex'ahlia blinked slowly. I don't understand. Neither does the Poseidon Protocol, Operation Black Star, or the Doomsday Countdown. Novak continued. We made them up, you lied. Vex'ahlia seemed genuinely confused by the concept. Not exactly, Ortiz interjected smoothly. We engaged in strategic information management to ensure mutual understanding. Klex made a sound that might have been laughter. You bluffed. Like in your game of poker. Some of it was bluff, Novak acknowledged. But not all. Our nuclear capabilities are real. Our conventional military strength is real. And our willingness to defend ourselves is very real. So which parts were true? Asked a Confederation security advisor. Richards smiled sweetly. That's the beauty of it. You'll never know for certain. The negotiations proceeded more smoothly after that oddly cathartic revelation. The Confederation, having already committed to treating Earth as an equal, couldn't backtrack without losing face. Within days, a formal treaty was signed. Earth would remain autonomous, free from Confederation supervision. In exchange, humanity would gradually be introduced to galactic society, with appropriate technological and cultural exchanges. And notably, at Admiral Klex's insistence, Earth would provide advisors to help develop a more robust Confederation security doctrine. Not to teach us warfare, Klex clarified when this raised eyebrows among his colleagues, but to teach us how to prevent it. As the Earth delegation prepared to return home, Vex'ahlia approached Novak privately. Your methods were unorthodox, the High Commissioner admitted, but effective. The Confederation has existed for 15 millennia without encountering a species quite like humanity. Is that a compliment? Novak asked. An observation, Vex'ahlia replied. Your kind thinks differently. You see threats where we see opportunities. You prepare for conflict even in times of peace. It's kept us alive. Yes, Vex'ahlia agreed thoughtfully. Perhaps there is wisdom in that approach we have been too comfortable to consider. Back on Earth, the team was celebrated as heroes. Novak received a formal promotion and a new assignment, Earth's first military attaché to the Galactic Confederation. Think you can handle playing nice with the space elves? General Hoffman asked during the ceremony. As long as they don't blow up any more grain silos, Novak replied. 6 months later, Admiral Klex presented Novak with a newly published document, the Confederation's first comprehensive security protocol manual. We've titled it Defensive Readiness Without Aggression, Klex explained proudly. Though some of my colleagues have taken to calling it How Not to Get Novak'd. Novak flipped through the manual, noting with amusement that an entire section was devoted to recognizing psychological warfare tactics. You know, he said, closing the book, for a species that's supposedly bad at war, you're pretty quick learners. We've had good teachers, Klex replied, though I'm still not convinced that thermobaric weapons are ever justified. Novak grinned. Give it time, Admiral. Give it time.